everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I am quickly wetting some Knit Picks Stroll fingering weight yarn so that way we can dye it in this shoebox. And I figured it'll be a little easier if the yarn starts off wet. Now, this yarn happens to be very absorbent, and the process we're going to use today is a longer one anyway. We're going to do some cold process dyeing. I'll talk about all of this more in a moment. So we don't really need a long pre-soak here at all. I just want the yarn to be wet. So that way when I add 8 cups of water, the yarn isn't going to soak up a ton of the volume. If the yarn were dry, then that would change the water level a little bit more. Now, why 8 cups of water? This is a ratio that works well for me. But I feel like I'm starting in the middle of the video here today. We added the yarn in, scrunched it up. I know I was slightly off camera. But let me hop in front and tell you more about my plan. So my plan today is to take some colors that I might not usually decide to pair together and do what I refer to as my shoebox technique, where I will add dye onto the yarn with no acid and then move things around to blend the colors. It's a lot of fun, and I think we're gonna have something really, really cool. But my plan is to use, and I don't know what other colors I'll pull in, but some purple and orange, and see what we end up with. Maybe we'll grab some other colors, but we're looking at different ends of our color wheel here. And yes, this is a color combination that I could intentionally, without blending, probably create something really cool and beautiful, but blended, we're gonna make something earthier, muddier, and I'm all for it. And so let's go see what colors I have in my toolbox today. Oh, and that yarn I mentioned, Stroll is 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon. I'm going into my stash of dye stocks today. We have some royal purple, fluorescent safety orange, and fluorescent lemon. Now, I believe our orange and yellow are mixed at more of like a, gosh, not at a 1% stock solution. I'm not quite sure of the proportions they were mixed. I feel like it was done, gosh, a long time ago, so I don't really know. It could be concentrated. And the royal purple is a deeper color. I think we're gonna end up with a really cool purple tone. I mean, well, not cool, a warm purple tone, but I'm excited. Okay, so we have no acid in here yet, and I'm just gonna go for it. And I think I'm gonna add the fluorescent safety orange here. That is a decent amount. The fluorescent lemon, we're gonna go here. Now, my tap water is slightly acidic, and so I do find that on superwash yarns, some amount of color will start striking pretty quickly, even without me adding acid. But now we're gonna bring in this purple. Okay, I know I said I was gonna do some colors that I didn't think would go together. This looks sick. I'm gonna have to do this intentionally now. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna add some purple there, and I was also gonna add a little bit of purple down there. You guys, like, my first immediate response was, wow. I don't think I would ever necessarily, especially if it wasn't for like Halloween, which I suppose I've done royal purple with, gosh, with some of those tones before for Halloween, but always with black. I liked that initial color sampling way more than I expected. But the difference here is we're gonna be blending things, but I am kind of obsessed with this. It was just so funny because earlier today, I was playing around with the colors that I had and thinking, gosh, you know what? I'm gonna do this combination. And I'm so glad I did. All right, I am going to clean up a little bit and try to leave the camera here while we wait 15 minutes. The reason behind waiting is that it's going to allow the dyes to spread a little bit where they're placed and potentially start to bind to the yarn a little bit. based on where they're placed, and help give us less overall even coverage in the end. Goodness, I do think I need to do one of these side by side where I have 2 containers, and then one, after adding the colors, I move it right away, and the other one I let wait for a bit to see if we see any difference. Editing, Rebecca, please write that down for me. It has been 15 minutes, and the dye has gone all the way down on a lot of the sides. And I think a lot of the dye has probably struck, but it is what it is. And what we're gonna do now is put 3 tablespoons of white vinegar on and immediately lift 1, 2, 3, and lower the yarn back in to our muddy mud. So look at how much the colors did sort of stay put. 15 minutes, oh my gosh. I think it was prettier when things were more separate. I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing almost just like bright orange is all that's remaining. You know what I forgot when I did this? Royal purple is a color that strikes fast. If I had used a color more like Caribbean blue or emerald green, the dye would have struck a lot slower, giving us more color when we went to move things around. But I think that we still have something that's kind of cool and earthy. I'm going to add that last bit of vinegar on. But now I just have to cold process everything. Cold process dyeing. What do I mean by this? This is what I use to refer to a technique where not only do I set things up at room temperature with the dye and the yarn and acid, but I let it sit at room temperature or sometimes outside if it's warmer weather. It's still winter over here. But I'll let it sit for a long period of time without adding a lot of heat. This allows the dyes to bind slowly, and if you're a small batch dyer like me, allows me to process more yarn at once. And so I really enjoy it. Now at the end of the period of time when typically all the dye will have absorbed onto our yarn, then I'll go ahead and steam set the yarn for good measure. And it means that I can process more yarn a lot faster, and I like doing it. So that's why I'm doing it. Now, as I mentioned, it's still winter, so I'm gonna safely set this somewhere aside. I usually put it on top of like a paper grocery bag, so that way, if there is any dye on the outside of the container, it won't stain anything. But I'll see you in a couple days. Mainly because it's a Friday afternoon, and we're gonna wait through the weekend. It is Monday, and let's take a look at our yarn. Surprisingly very green and mustard, which was not what I expected from our neon orange. Okay, we've got some orange in there too, and our neon yellow, and then royal purple. But you know what? It gives off something like mossy, forest, floral kind of vibes, and I don't hate it. Now, there is some color left behind. We're gonna say goodbye to that as we go steam set our yarn. In this pot, I have a steamer insert above some hot water. And that water did start off as very hot, but it's not hot enough yet to give us some steam. I'm gonna go ahead and put the yarn in, and you can see that we were like a little bit steamy, but I'm gonna go ahead and steam set this for 45 minutes because I think it'll take a little bit of time for things to actually get hot. The goal is usually about 30 minutes, but 45 should not hurt anything. And so then, yeah, I'll see you when the timer goes off. It has been 45 minutes and we are very, very, very steamy. So let's say the lens is steamy, and has the color shifted? No, I was just looking at other yarn. You can't really see it because we're too steamy, but alas, that is what it is. All right, I'm gonna remove the yarn from the steamer basket. We're gonna set it aside to cool, and then we'll wash it. So what is it that makes a colorway ugly anyway, as we go to start washing this yarn? Because I knew that I was blending colors that would blend into mud, but mud isn't necessarily ugly. Like I could have pulled, I mean this isn't quite an aubergine, but I could have pulled a deep purple moss and mustard and thought, ooh, that is a very interesting color combination. And then I would look at this and think, ooh, it's earthy, it's pretty, and I wouldn't necessarily think of the descriptor ugly. But if you take a look at the color combination of, as I add some just dish soap, of the purple with a neon orange and a neon yellow, this is not a colorway you would think of when you look at those three colors together and think about doing something with those three colors. And so maybe the quote ugly is when something goes from bright to muddy. But it really depends, because there are plenty of people out there who, and maybe there's a little bit of some color coming out, but not much. There's plenty of people out there who prefer more muted color palettes. And I know there's someone who's gonna like this colorway, but then there are other people who prefer brighter colors, jewel tones, and things who are gonna look at this and be like, this colorway is not for me. And I will be honest, I don't think that this is a colorway that I would necessarily reach for myself, but something about it is a little bit appealing to me. So I'm curious to hear what you think. Now, it's very rare that I look at the yarn that I dye and think that it's ugly. I think there was one time, and maybe it was a lab partner yarn, that the colorway didn't work out the way I thought, and so I was like, maybe, I ended up not letting that be the lab partner video. I redid the project, but I shared the other video anyway, because I was unsure if that colorway would have been likable. But today, like, I intentionally tried to create something muddy, and I like what we ended up with. So I know I'm probably using the word ugly and maybe calling this video something about like the ugliest yarn I've ever created, but I don't actually think it's ugly. Maybe it was just a little bit clickbaity, and I'm sorry for that. But I know that there will be people who think that this is ugly, and that is okay. I think that it's fun to experiment with different color combinations, because sometimes we come up with something magical. Like I love the way emerald green and deep purple blend together and then break, and I think that that is fantastic, and I wouldn't have ended up with that if I hadn't tried mixing them together. So sometimes it's worth doing a mix and seeing where we end up. But anyway, I'm gonna pop this through my spin dryer and then hang it up to dry. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and so what makes a colorway really ugly and one really beautiful? Well, it's everyone's different preferences. And of course, even though he's outside, I turn the camera on and Indy starts barking. It is what it is when you have a really, really old dog. We did end up with some glazing in here, which is really cool. Royal purple is a color that strikes really fast, as we saw when we set this up. And so you can get that airbrushed feel. You can do it intentionally too, but I like when it happens accidentally. There's really no such thing as objectively ugly or objectively beautiful. These are really terms when it comes to preference. And think about it when you're critiquing someone else's work. Just because you might not like a type of colorway or the way the yarn looks doesn't mean that someone else may not like it. But this is also a reason why sometimes I show over dyeing projects, because sometimes you may end up with a yarn, whether it was a mystery yarn or a yarn you bought a long time ago and changed your mind about. Sometimes you just want to transform it into something else. And I plan to leave this one as is, but if I wanted to transform it further, maybe I would get more of that royal purple. Maybe I would grab some navy or black and just over dye it to tone down some of the dark and bright contrast. But I don't know, maybe because it's just so unexpected and so not what I normally dye, I really like it. And I am really excited to read your comments, even if you say this is the ugliest yarn you think I've ever created. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I like to take risks, both with color choices, although I don't do that quite as much, but also with the techniques that I play with. Because sometimes by pushing the limits of what we think creates beautiful yarn, we end up learning something and learning either a technique that is really fun for you to do or a color combination that maybe you wouldn't have blended together, but you absolutely adore the result. And since I film all of these projects, we learn, not only do I learn, but you can learn along with me and decide, yes, that's a technique I want to try, or no, I don't like the way that turned out. I don't want to put my time, effort, and materials into trying that project or that color combination. And make sure you check down in the video description, because I always include under video contents, which gives like the chapters that you see on the video, I try to include the colors that I used, if I measured the proportions of the colors I used, and those types of details, not just so that way I can refer back to it, but to make it easier for you if you want to tweak my recipe or try to recreate it for yourself. My whole Dye Pot Weekly series started when I decided, okay, I'm going to try dyeing with acid dyes. And in the beginning, my hesitation is very, very visible, and my confidence has grown over the years. But sometimes I'm still unsure about what I'm doing. And even after, I don't even know how many years I've been doing this now. So please subscribe and turn on notifications if you love the journey. Thank you so much for watching.